Hi, I'm Corinne. My parents promised me a future, and then gave it to my brother instead. When they needed help years later, they came crawling back. But I didn't answer. I gave them his number. They erased my college fund, signed my name on loans, and told me I was never the one they could count on. But what happens when the daughter they dismissed becomes the woman who won't stay silent? I was folding laundry when the phone rang, ordinary in every way, except for the name glowing on the screen. Mom. I stared at it for a beat too long, towel still half folded in my hands, before answering. Hi, sweetheart. Her voice came through with that forced brightness that always meant something was wrong. Or worse, that something was wanted. It's been a while, she said. I let the silence stretch before replying. Has it? Awkward laughter. Well, you know how life is, always busy. Sure, I said flatly. What's up? And there it was. No easing in, no apology, no warmth. We were hoping you could help out a little. It's about your dad. Medical bills, things are piling up. I leaned against the kitchen counter, the hum of the refrigerator suddenly too loud. She didn't ask how I was, didn't ask about work, my health, my life. Just straight to the ask. I think, I said slowly, you should probably call Rowan. Silence. Then, he's not in a position to help right now. Interesting, I said. Since he was the one you invested in, her tone turned clipped. That's not fair, Corinne. Neither was what you did. There was a long pause, one that trembled on the edge of confrontation. But I wasn't in the mood for war. Not yet. Do you need his number? I asked. What? You said you can't reach him. I can send you his number. I heard her exhale sharply, caught between confusion and denial. You don't have to be cruel. I'm not. I'm just done being convenient. I ended the call, then deleted her number. 17 years ago, I believed in things like fairness and plans. I believed that if you did what you were told, kept your head down, helped out, there would be something waiting for you, a reward, a path. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table in Fort Worth, flipping through college brochures and dreaming out loud about Boston or Seattle, when my mother walked in with tea and tension behind her smile. We need to talk, she said. That was the day I learned the truth. The college fund, my college fund, was gone. Spent. For Rowan, she said. He has so much potential. You're smart, but he's gifted. She didn't say I wasn't worth it, but she didn't have to. I don't remember what I said next. Maybe I didn't say anything. Maybe I just nodded and swallowed the bitterness that still lodged somewhere between my stomach and my spine. Back in Austin, the city buzzed outside my window. I'd built a life here, by force, not fortune. Law school funded through night shifts and student loans, internships I had to beg for, clients who thought I was too young, too female, too everything. But I made it. They know that, of course, but it's never mentioned. My mother once told a cousin I dabbled in law, like it was a hobby I'd picked up between marriages. They don't ask about my cases, my wins. They don't ask about me. I used to wonder if cutting contact was too extreme, if I was punishing them for being human. But now, as I closed my phone and exhaled into the quiet, I realized something. They never apologized, and if they were sorry now, it wasn't for what they did. It was because they had no one left to ask. They gave him my future. I gave them his number. It had been nearly a year since I'd last stepped through my parents' front door, and somehow everything felt smaller. The hallway smelled like old potpourri and disinfectant. The walls were still lined with faded family photos, none of me past age 16. Just checking on Dad, I'd told myself, but we both knew why I came. Guilt still knew how to use the right bait. Corinne, my mother's voice rang out from the kitchen with forced cheer. You made it. Wouldn't miss it, I replied, even though I had missed plenty. Birthdays, holidays, anniversaries. She gave me a quick, distant hug, the kind you give someone at a funeral you didn't want to attend. Dad was asleep in the den, his TV murmuring in the background. Mom insisted he was doing fine, which usually meant he wasn't. The visit was shallow, polite questions, empty answers. At some point, she handed me a box. These are old things from the garage. Thought you might want to take a look. I carried it out to the patio. Dusty yearbooks, loose photos, a cracked snow globe from a childhood trip to Denver. At the bottom, I found a slim blue ledger, labeled in my mother's neat cursive, College Fund Corinne. My chest tightened. I flipped it open. The first few pages listed deposits, birthday money, checks from grandparents. Then, about halfway through, pages had been torn out, clean to the binding. What remained were new pages labeled Rowan MIT Prep. The kind of silence that filled my lungs then wasn't just quiet. It was erasure. I stared at the rip marks, jagged and deliberate. This wasn't a clerical mistake. It was a rewrite. My hands trembled as I remembered her voice from so many Christmas mornings. "This is for your future, sweetheart." No, that had been a script, and I'd memorized my lines like a fool. By dinner, the nausea had settled somewhere behind my ribs. Mom had cooked roast chicken and set the table like we were still pretending things were normal. "So, Corinne," Uncle Mike said, "still doing that legal work?" "Won a motion to suppress a coerced confession last week," I replied. "Client walked free, wrongfully charged." Before anyone could react, Mom interjected. "Did you hear about Rowan? He got invited to this elite coding boot camp. Full ride. They only take 20 students a year." She beamed like she'd birthed a prodigy. The room buzzed with obligatory applause. I stared at my plate, hands still. No one asked about my case. No one looked at me. I reached for my glass, took one sip, and put it down carefully, like any sudden motion might shatter the illusion that I was still part of this family. I didn't speak for the rest of the meal. That night, the drive back to Austin felt longer than usual. The roads dark and empty, like someone had erased the landscape too. Back home, I slipped the ledger onto my bookshelf. Not out of sentiment, but as evidence. They thought tearing out those pages deleted me. They thought I'd forget. But the page they tore out? I kept it. It was nearly 11 p.m. when the call came through. I was sitting cross-legged on my office floor, going over a deposition, half-drained cup of tea beside me, laptop humming with too many open tabs. When I saw his name flash across the screen, I hesitated. I hadn't heard from Rowan directly in months. "Hey," he said like nothing had happened. "You busy?" I didn't answer that. He never actually cared if I was. "Just wanted to run something by you real quick. Nothing crazy." That's how he always started. Like his brand of trouble could be casually slipped into conversation. "I've got this opportunity," he continued. "Kind of a big deal. A friend's launching a startup, and I need a car to get out to their workspace. It's outside Dallas. You know how that goes. Anyway, I was hoping you could co-sign the loan for it." He said it as easily as someone might ask for a ride to the airport. I said nothing. "Look, you've got the credit. I've got the plan," he added with a little laugh, like we were still 10 and 12 and trying to build a rocket out of soda bottles and duct tape. I didn't say no. I didn't say yes either. I told him I'd think about it, then hung up before he could say anything else. My heart wasn't pounding. It wasn't even racing. It was still. That was the part that scared me most. Sunday lunch came 2 days later. I didn't want to go, but the guilt train still pulled up to my door sometimes, and I climbed aboard out of habit. I told myself it would be a quick meal. Smile, nod, leave early. The table was already set when I arrived. Mom made lasagna, which meant she wanted things to feel comfortable. Dad barely looked up from his plate. Rowan, on the other hand, was already halfway into a beer and way too comfortable in my seat. Conversation flitted between the weather, Dad's medication schedule, and the neighbor's new fence. I waited until the lull. "Rowan called me," I said, looking only at my plate. "He asked me to co-sign a car loan." He didn't even blink. "I did," he said. "I figured you'd be the logical choice." "And why would I be that?" "Because you're not using your credit for anything that matters." The room got quiet. Mom cleared her throat but didn't speak. "You've always made it harder for me, Corinne," Rowan added, his voice sharper now. "You think you're better because you worked some dead-end jobs and crawled through law school?" I raised my eyes to meet his. "No, I think I'm better because I didn't ask anyone else to do it for me." He laughed then. It wasn't kind. "You gave up," he said. "That's the only reason I got anything." Mom still didn't speak. Dad looked at his hands. I waited for someone, anyone, to push back. But the silence screamed louder than Rowan ever could. I stood up slowly, picked up my bag. My mother finally looked up. "Don't be dramatic," she said. "Don't worry," I replied, voice level. "I'm just following your example." The drive back to Austin was quiet, but not empty. His words played on a loop. The entitlement, the gall, the absolute confidence that he deserved more because I had walked away. I hadn't walked away, I had been pushed. But that day, I did walk. For real this time. That was the last time I ever stepped into that house as their daughter. At 7:42 a.m., my inbox greeted me with betrayal in bold. The subject line read, "Loan doc, just sign and send back." From Darlene Maddox. No greeting, no context, just a smiley face. I opened it, already bracing for disappointment, but even that felt like an understatement once I saw the attachment. A full auto loan application, filled out in my name, address, SSN. She had everything. And she used it. In the message body, she wrote, "It's for Rowan. He just needs a chance. We knew you'd come through." No questions, no request, just assumption dressed in manipulation. I stared at the screen, the cursor blinking beneath her closing line like it was daring me to react. My chest tightened, not in panic, but in the kind of stunned stillness that always comes before a storm. I called her. She picked up after one ring. "Good morning," she chirped. "You sent legal documents under my name without even asking," I said. "Oh, Corinne, don't be so serious. It's not a big deal." "Not a big deal? You used my name for a loan I never agreed to. You've always had better credit," she said, like it was a compliment. "Why wouldn't you help?" And there it was. The Maddox family motto, "You exist to fix what Rowan breaks." I hung up without another word. By noon, I was trying to distract myself at work when a cousin texted. "Hey, heard about Uncle Virgil? Is he doing okay?" What? 15 minutes later, I was in my car, speeding toward the hospital in Fort Worth, calling every number I had. No one picked up. At the check-in desk, the nurse looked at me politely and said, "I'm sorry, ma'am. You're not listed as an emergency contact." My throat went dry. "He's my father." "I understand, but we only have his wife and son on file." I found my mother standing outside his room, sipping from a cup of vending machine coffee, like she had all the time in the world. "You didn't tell me," I said. She looked up, unsurprised. "We didn't want to worry you." "You didn't think I deserved to know my father was hospitalized?" "Rowan's been handling it," she replied. "He's been under a lot of stress." I felt something cold settle in my stomach, heavier than rage. It was clarity. They didn't forget me. They'd replaced me. She kept talking, something about test results and insurance, but I wasn't listening anymore. The hallway felt like it was closing in, the air too still, the silence too sharp. I left. I didn't say goodbye. Back in my car, I stared at the steering wheel like it might suddenly give me answers. Instead, I only heard my own voice repeating in my head. They cut me out of the decisions, but want me in the consequences. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I drove. If they wanted Rowan to be the chosen one, they could live with that choice. The nurse didn't flinch when she said it. "I'm sorry, but you're not authorized to receive updates. You're not on the contact list." I blinked, barely catching my breath. "I'm his daughter." "Yes, ma'am, I understand, but the system only lists his wife and his son." I stood there for a moment, not knowing whether to laugh or scream. The hallway smelled like antiseptic and overripe flowers. My palms itched, not from nerves. This was something deeper, something closer to fury disguised as disbelief. I found my mother standing just outside my father's hospital room, sipping on a paper cup of coffee like she was waiting for an Uber, not sitting vigil over her sick husband. "You didn't tell me," I said, voice low. She turned, unbothered. "We didn't want to worry you." "You didn't think I deserved to know my own father was in the hospital?" "Rowan's been handling everything," she replied, shrugging. "He's been really great through all of this." Great. That's the word she used, as if competence were measured by secrets kept and daughters erased. I looked past her, through the small window on the door. My father lay pale beneath a beige blanket, mouth slightly open, a slow drip feeding something into his arm. I hadn't even known he was sick again. They didn't forget me. They replaced me, and they weren't even subtle about it. I left without saying another word, drove home in silence, radio off, window open to let the night slap me awake. I needed that sharp air to keep me grounded because something inside me was unraveling fast. When I got back to Austin, I checked the mail out of habit more than anything else. A thick envelope stuck out, certified, with a return address I didn't recognize. I opened it at the kitchen table, with a slice of leftover pizza and zero emotional preparation. I skimmed the first line and felt my throat close. Notice of default, personal loan, amount, $128,000, lender, Caprock Lending. My name, my social security number, my debt, only it wasn't mine. The page fluttered as my hands shook. I flipped through the packet. Electronic signature. Auto payments missed for 3 months. Collections pending. I called the number at the top of the form. A woman answered, monotone and efficient. Caprock Lending, this is Heather. I gave her the loan number, my name. She pulled it up and paused. Yes, this was signed electronically by Corinne on... She rattled off a date. I didn't hear the rest. I was too busy watching my entire life tilt sideways. I never signed this, I said. Heather didn't sound surprised. You'll need to file a fraud claim, ma'am. I can email you the form. When I hung up, I just sat there. Still. Numb. They didn't just cut me out of decisions. They took my name, my identity, my future, again. But not this time. I opened my laptop, created a folder, named it simply Proof, dragged in every bank alert, every scan of the loan notice, created subfolders for documentation, email screenshots, credit reports, cold, precise. I didn't cry. I built. They took everything. My future, my name, my silence. This time I won't just survive. I'll bury them in facts. The video call was only supposed to be 10 minutes. Just a check-in. A polite illusion that I still belonged to a family I no longer recognized. Mom smiled on the screen, thin-lipped and tired-looking. She adjusted the camera so I could see the table behind her, a pile of unopened mail, magazines, and a white envelope that stopped me cold. My name was on it. Corinne Maddox, black ink, clean font, bank logo in the corner. I hadn't lived there in over a decade. There was no reason for anything to be mailed to that house. What's that? I asked, keeping my tone casual. She glanced back. Oh, probably junk. We get all kinds of stuff still addressed to you. That one's from a credit union. Is it? She said too quickly. I'll toss it. And just like that, she moved on. Asked me how work was, if I was still doing that lawyer thing. I smiled through gritted teeth. Every second of that call confirmed what I already knew. They weren't just using me. They'd never stopped. Later that night, long past midnight, my phone buzzed again. I should have let it ring. I didn't. Corinne. Rowan's voice came through sharp, frantic. You don't have to go through with this. Please. I said nothing. You're my sister. You're right, I said, my voice steady. I was. He exhaled. Come on, you can't do this to me. You already did it to yourself. There was a pause, just long enough for me to hear the silence in his background. No friends, no support, just him in whatever hole he'd buried himself. I didn't mean for it to get this far. No, I said. You meant to get away with it. His tone changed. He got louder, meaner. The shift was immediate. You think you're better than me? He snapped. You've always loved playing the victim. You love this. You live for people to feel sorry for you. I let him spit venom, every word confirming what I already believed. He wasn't sorry. He was scared. He continued, You wouldn't even have a degree if Mom and Dad hadn't kept you housed and fed. You act like you clawed your way through the dirt. Please, you had it easy. The silence that followed was not passive. It was steel. I thought of every birthday skipped, every holiday where I showed up because I still believed it mattered, every loan payment I made while he coasted through excuses, every time I bit my tongue when he failed upward. Now I unbit it. You think silence was weakness, I said, but it was patience, and patience runs out. He tried again, voice cracking this time. You don't want to do this. You don't want to ruin everything. Everything was already ruined. I'm just documenting the damage. I hung up. That same night, I opened my email. Subject line, fraud case initiation, Maddox attachment, legal documentation from my attorney. Status, filed. Then I opened my contacts list and scrolled until I found Mom. I didn't delete her. I renamed her. Darlene Maddox, no answer. They wanted a savior. What they got was a witness. The front door creaked the same way it always had. One long groan, like the house itself tired of pretending. I stepped inside with that stale scent of lemon polish and closed-up rooms hitting me like a curtain of memory I hadn't asked to walk through. She was waiting in the kitchen, arms crossed, coffee cooling beside her untouched. Darlene Maddox didn't do apologies. She did schedules. This meeting had a time slot. 15 minutes, I assumed, before she had to go tend to your father's prescriptions. I wanted to talk before things go any further, she said, voice clipped. I didn't sit. About? She lifted her chin like a school principal delivering a warning. You've been making things difficult. All this legal drama, stirring things up with lawyers, hurting Rowan. I blinked. Just once. You're worried about Rowan getting hurt? He's under a lot of pressure, she said. And he never asked for things to get this ugly. No, he just signed my name on loans, opened credit cards, lied to my face. He was trying to survive. He didn't have the same grit you did. That was when she said it. You were never the one we could count on. Rowan had potential. You had attitude. I didn't breathe. I didn't flinch. I simply stared at the woman who once whispered bedtime stories into my ear and said she believed in me. It all made sense now. All of it. This wasn't about failure. It wasn't even about favoritism. It was fantasy. She built her life around who she thought we were. And in her version, I was the cautionary tale, the backup, the unwanted burden she could never quite write out of the story. Until now. I turned to leave. Then he called to me. From down the hallway, quiet and raspy. Corinne? My father. He was sitting in the worn recliner, a blanket over his knees. The years hadn't been kind to him. Or maybe they had, if being silent long enough counts as survival. I should have said something, he told me when I knelt beside him. I knew what was happening with the money, with everything. I looked up. He didn't meet my eyes. I thought I was keeping the peace, he said, but I was just keeping the lie. I waited a beat, then another. You were the only one, I said, I thought might have cared. He reached for my hand, but I stood before he could touch me. I walked to the shelf by the fireplace and picked up the photo frame, one of me at age 9, holding a spelling bee ribbon, beaming. I set it down on the dining table. I didn't need it. I didn't need any of it. You don't have to hate someone to let them go, I told myself as I opened the front door. You just have to stop hoping. Back in Austin that night, I reviewed the case file. Everything neatly ordered, evidence labeled, testimony archived. And then I clicked open one more message. Rowan's voice played through my laptop speakers, shaky, raw. Corinne, please, don't take this public. Don't make me the villain. We can fix this. But he already was the villain. The kind that smiles when he wins and cries when he loses. The kind people protect because he never looks like the danger. I added the message to the file. If they believed he was their future, then let them live in it. Alone. The air in my apartment had a different kind of stillness now. Not the suffocating quiet of tension or held breath, but the kind that settles after the last storm passes. I stood barefoot on the balcony, watering my herbs, watching droplets bead on the basil leaves like tiny fragments of what used to hurt. No more texts, no more calls, no updates. And for once, that silence wasn't absence. It was permission. I didn't miss them. An email came later that morning. A name I hadn't seen in years popped up in the inbox. Rowan's former landlord. Subject, FYI in case you care. Apparently he'd filed for bankruptcy. Evicted. No forwarding address. I stared at the message. No emotion stirred. No satisfaction. No triumph. Just an echo of something I'd already buried. He burned every rope he was ever thrown. I closed the laptop without replying. 3 days later, a cousin I hadn't spoken to since college left a voicemail. Your dad passed. Just thought you'd want to know. That was it. No funeral invite, no follow-up, just a notification, a footnote in someone else's story. I didn't cry. I ordered lilies, white, full bloom, had them delivered to the chapel, no note attached. Let them guess. Grief didn't look like what I thought it would. It didn't knock me over or tear me open. It just settled into my bones like cold. Familiar. Not painful. Not welcome. At work, I started boxing up my files. I'd taken a new position, lead counsel on a statewide initiative supporting victims of financial abuse. It wasn't flashy work, but it was necessary, purposeful. One by one, I packed the folders. My last case with Rowan's name on it sat at the top. Closed, filed, done. My phone buzzed once. An old voicemail flagged as urgent from my mother. I didn't listen. I deleted it without hesitation. I didn't win. This was never a game. I just stopped letting them play with my life. Some wounds don't scar, they stay raw, but sometimes they teach you where not to bleed again. No reconciliation, no fairy tale closure, no second chances whispered through trembling apologies. Just a locked door, a cleared inbox, and a life I built with my own hands, brick by bitter brick. I didn't slam the door shut, but I did learn how to lock it. Looking back, I've learned this. Sometimes, the hardest thing isn't walking away. It's choosing not to turn back. Family doesn't always mean safety. Love doesn't always come wrapped in kindness. And the people who are supposed to protect you might be the ones you need protection from. If I could leave you with anything, it's this. You are allowed to choose yourself. You are not selfish for saying no, not cruel for setting boundaries. You are not broken because you outgrew the role someone forced you into. Maybe your story looks different than mine. Maybe you're still in the thick of it, still answering the phone, still explaining yourself, still waiting for them to finally see you. I get it, but I hope you'll remember, healing doesn't require permission. Closure doesn't require a reunion. Tell me, have you ever had to walk away from someone who was supposed to love you right? What gave you the strength? Or maybe you're still finding it. Either way, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a 1 in the comments if this story hit home for you. Or tell me what state you're watching from. I read every single one. And hey, if you didn't like this story, that's okay too. Tell me why. Let's talk about it. If this video moved something in you, or made you pause even for a second, subscribe to this channel. There are more stories coming, real, raw, and rooted in truth. We heal louder when we heal together.